So we're about to have our panel, Mobilizing the Business Community in Government Affairs. And I'd like to introduce our moderator. I'll mention our moderator was going to be our board chair, Samantha Parmley, but she and her family are ill. So please send your best wishes and energy to them. Ed Turner. Ed Turner has always lived socially and economically in the LGBTQ plus community and brings his full identity to the world as a person living with HIV since 1982. After having retired from a 32-year career at the Supreme Court of the United States as the Deputy Chief of Staff, as a spokesperson for the court, as assistant clerk handling death penalty cases and other emergency matters, like whether or not the chair is going to fall down if someone sits in it, and as the first male secretary in the Public Information Office, Ed, his partner Steve, and their dog Riley are thrilled to be living their best lives in Utah since 2017. Ed enjoys skiing, antiques, travel, fundraising, and choosing happiness with a side of snarkiness. Ed Turner.
Grab a chair.
The chair just, okay. Put them where you're comfortable. I won't interfere with my chair. This won't interfere. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for being here. My pronouns are he, him, but frankly, I will respond to anything, including, hey, girl. What a day. Change. We've heard a lot of things about change. But before we get started, what I want to find out is who's here. You know, these panels can be a bit awkward. I will sit up here with 3 of my closest friends for 15 minutes or so, pretending like you don't exist. And I don't want to do that. So I want to find out who's here for the benefit of the panel. So when I call out your name, what I'd like you to do is shout out either, you have a choice, either who you're with, or in 3 words or less, what you want, what your expectations are from this panel. Adolfo.
Great, that's nice.
Hello. Show me how.
Okay, great.
Great.
Emily.
Number 1 area to focus.
Number 1 area to focus? Okay, thank you. William, as in William Wright. Is he still here?
So he's not here. I'm stepping in for him. My name is Annie Feldman. We're with the Department of Economic Development for Salt Lake City.
Great, thank you. Liz, did she escape? No. Hey, Liz.
I thought I'd wait because I knew you were going to call me 3 words, but I can only do it in 300 or less.
Go for it.
Seriously, one of the things I am trying to figure out as a leader in this organization is how to effectively, how to affect social change, how to affect public policy, and what is the right thing tactically and strategically for a diversity chamber like ours to do, or the right things to do for advocacy.
Great, thanks. Last, Tracy.
Keys to successful advocacy marketing by Liz. Keys to successful advocacy marketing.
Very good, thanks.
Question mark.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Question mark. And one, just one?
Correct.
Comma, okay. So as Liz said, I stepped in to moderate this panel, and I really didn't have time to do the exhaustive research that my other career in Washington required of me to find out a little more about our panelists. You've read their bios, and so you already know that Justin is the star of Wells Fargo, and Mindy is Equality Utah, and the senator, well, the senator is working hard in the Senate and not ducking or hiding in any corner they have.
You should see his Twitter. It's pretty awesome. Just saying.
Depends who you ask.
Wow.
But there's always something we don't know about them beyond their bios. And so I'd like you each to tell us one thing that might surprise us or that you want to share. And I'll start with the senator.
Awesome. Thank you. This is great to be here. This is actually in my district, too. I don't know if that's why I was invited, but I have all of South Salt Lake in my district. So welcome to District 13. One thing a lot of folks may not know about me, I failed out of college the first time around. So I'm the youngest in the state Senate. but also my path took a little bit of a weird turn. I went to school for a couple of years and wasn't enjoying it in Ohio, and so I grew up in New Hampshire and big time skier, and Ohio is very flat, so it didn't work out so well. Went back to New Hampshire, and then that circuitously brought me to Utah. So it didn't take the traditional path necessarily, but came out here, went back to Salt Lake Community College and the University of Utah, and ended up really working nicely. So it's exciting to have moved on. That was only 6 years ago I graduated from the U, so pretty cool.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Mindy?
I actually think I'm such an open book that most everyone knows all my things, but I think it surprises a lot of us in the queer community that I have 5 boys and I have 2 grandbaby boys. So, apparently I'm an overachiever.
Good. Good. And Justin?
Well, I spent a lot of time in New York City, did the singer-songwriter gig on the side of a financial gig, because that's what you do in Manhattan. Cool thing I learned about Wells Fargo, and I don't want to be a drinking Kool-Aid type of employee, but I found out while I was in New York working for a different institution that Wells was actually the first financial institution to support the Gay Pride Initiative, the marches, the parades. They sponsored one of the first ones in San Francisco. They were paying out the tax differences to couples who could not marry at the time. They would actually cut a check to their employees to offset the taxes that their spouses couldn't file on because they weren't legally married. Wow. And it was really impressive to me that a financial institution had stuck with the community that long. They're the longest supportive financial institution in Utah before any other bank or institution was supporting the community. So it was really a moment that I could actually sit back and go, yeah, this company I work for kind of kicks ass. So yeah.
I'll drink that Kool-Aid.
Right.
And I suppose I should reveal something about myself since I've asked that question, and this might be awkward for the senator to hear because I'm not sure you've caught up to this, but and I'm not sure quite. Well, I've been living with your mother for the past year.
Oh, awesome.
So I thought
You're out at Summit Vista.
I am.
Okay.
I am, which is
Nice.
a 62, for those of you that don't know, a 62 and over community that by the time they finish building out will have 1,500 apartments. Yep. And nearly 2,500 to 2,700 residents. We will be an example of the change that's coming to the city, and will be a micro voting block and a group that has very strong views and wants to advocate for what is important to them, just like we are here today. And so with that, I'd like to get started and pose some tough questions to this group. Here so I can see you. First up, when is it appropriate for my business to justify making a public statement about social issues? So making a public statement about social issues, and Justin, you're closest to me, so I'm gonna put you on the hot spot.
Okay. I have notes too, so because I have COVID brain a little bit. It's kind of still fogging around. I think when proposed laws start impacting your business and the economy, and not just the community itself, but also the employees that you have, I think that's the time to speak up. From a business standpoint, I don't know if as an individual there's any point where, other than at the very beginning, to try to get as much advocacy work done as possible. I'm just kind of trying to get into the weeds of things. But as a business, I think when a law or initiative is being discussed, it's important to get involved as a business when it starts impacting your economic development, impacting your employees. For instance, the DE&I, politicizing DE&I stuff. Just speaking on that really quick. Speaking out with support of those initiatives to show that the DE&I initiatives in your company are working is important for lawmakers and commissioners and council members to know about, that it's impacting your business, it's allowing your business to thrive. I met with an individual the last couple of days from the philanthropy arm of the bank, and he is a vet and was speaking to me about the fact that the DE&I initiatives are so everyone can win. It's not that we're setting aside attention for smaller groups in consequence of the larger group not getting something. When in the end, the smaller groups, the marginalized communities, when we lift them up, everybody gets to win, because it essentially brings up the economy and partnership of everybody. So in the end, everybody wins in those initiatives, but it's important to get involved in those cases when it affects your business directly, especially with those initiatives, to let your lawmaker or council member know what your business's position is on the matter. So,
Senator, you're nodding your head. Jump in.
Yeah, I think that kind of hit a lot of the points I would have spoken to anyway. I don't think you have to be too picky. If it impacts your business, if it impacts your employees, if it impacts this community, I think that's the beauty of a chamber is having the collective voice of businesses. Probably, I assume a lot of these are smaller businesses in this capacity. I see Gary out here with the South Salt Lake Chamber, so I know they've done a good job at getting a bunch of businesses together, and I think anytime you bring that together and show kind of a unified front, that is really impactful. Talking about the economic impact, and that we talk a lot about the economy in Utah that influences a lot of legislators. It's definitely an important piece, but if you can tie it back to how it's going to impact your bottom line, I think those are the real, impactful moments when that kind of thing comes to the forefront.
Right, Mindy, take it. What you've heard, maybe in a little different. Any concerns here?
Well, I think it's one thing to make a statement. It's really easy to be like, this is how we view it. And even especially on social media, like, boom, and drop it on social media. But I think real advocacy and effective advocacy is when we make clear relationships. When I'm talking to Nate outside of the legislative session and outside of an issue, and I make a relationship with you, and you know me as a business owner, and you know what I believe in, you're going to count me more than just your constituent, but as a friend. And then you'll listen to your friends much more than you'll listen to something on a post. And I think that's advocacy. By showing up today and being part of the LGBTQ chamber and showing up, I feel like Liz Pitts does this very well. She shows up, she makes relationships. Say the whole chamber board, who doesn't know Shannon? Everyone does, because they're out there building relationships. And it's hard, what's that old quote? It's hard to hate up close. When people know us and love us and want to work with us, that's when the magic happens. And I think our legislators, they don't think like us often. They don't vote like us often. But if that majority can get to know us individually as people and get to know our families and our businesses, that's when the power comes.
Yeah, Senator, I want to go back to you.
Yeah.
Give us a little insight, because you are active. You have strong held opinions before you were elected. What is it like for you now, to the extent you can tell us?
Well, I think the point Mindy just made about building relationships is key. I mean, I'm only a text away. Like that's something I would stress is like, we're pretty easy to, at least we should be easy to find as legislators. That's part of our job, is being accessible to the public. And, I try to be as responsive as possible on I think texting is surprisingly maybe for some people the easiest way to reach me, and even I think a lot of the other legislators. If we can text, we have it in front of us. It may not get an immediate response, but it's there. It's easy to see. Sometimes email gets buried. A phone call, go to the inbox more often than not. A text, it just seems to work better. So that's one thing I would say is just anytime you can text, I think that's a really good way to communicate with people. Could you refresh the question? That was kind of not directly related, but.
What has it been like for you to transition into this new position? Your views haven't necessarily changed.
No, No,
but you're in a new role, and with that
yeah.
comes this gesture. I suppose you're sort of a bit removed, not removed, but
I mean, I try not. I think there is this sense of removal from a lot of people that, like, you make it into the legislature, city council or something, and you're supposed to be further removed, and I think that's kind of sad. I think, we should be more in touch with people. We should be out in the community doing these sorts of events and meeting with business. I mean, I met with Scott at Tizanti. I know he's had some issues before on some pretty nasty stuff. So it's good to be out there and just talking to people and not being too far removed. So I think I wish more people would take that when they were elected, is not just getting into the role and then like feeling like you're kind of behind the curtain. So I think accessibility is something that's really important that we don't quite see enough of.
Just before I move on to the next question, Justin, can you maybe give us a perspective, taking what you just heard from the senator, how you approach somebody on the Hill, not just our friend here, but in general?
Attending legislative sessions that are important to me personally. I'm also a musician, so if there's anything, especially in New York, when there was anything being talked about with when the tax system was being renegotiated of what a performer could and couldn't write off and all that stuff, that was important to me, and I showed up because a lot of people kind of wait on the back end that their voice really doesn't matter, and I know it's kind of something we've heard over and over sometimes. But it really does, and when you do show up and you make those connections, it does sometimes change the perspective of the individual that is representing that specific initiative. So if someone puts forth a bill about, I don't know, the music stuff, I show up, I talk to them about how that's going to impact me, or how that's going to benefit me. It makes that connection, as Mindy spoke to, and it really does drive a result with your representative, because it could bring a completely different perspective that they had never thought of. And I think if I'm wrong, Nate, you can let me know, but it seems sometimes in lawmaking, everyone works in a silo, in an echo chamber. And sometimes people don't get outside of that and realize, wait a minute, I didn't even think about how this would affect this. I'm so glad, Mindy, you spoke to me about this, because yeah, that does matter. And so it could definitely change the trajectory of what's going on.
Okay, thanks. Mindy, I'm going to call on you first for this one. Okay. So our chamber currently is pretty diverse. And that's only going to be more so in the years to come. What do you see is an effective government affairs advocacy strategy and tactics for these sorts of issues, considering the makeup of our chamber and the varied interest? Yeah,
well, we keep talking about relationships, and in the we all know money talks. So when we, like you said, make a united front and they see a thriving LGBTQ chamber, it's a lot easier to listen. I keep thinking of my friend Becky Pickle, which a lot of us know her because she's given money to a lot of our organizations. She gets listened to because she's just a business owner who shows up, and they listen, and she gets invited places. And I think as chamber members, like you're being involved, and then also get involved in other like-minded chambers, and where you are interested. Maybe you're joining the Black Chamber, maybe you're joining the Salt Lake Chamber, the South Valley Chamber, that you're involved and people know you and those relationships are going like this. It's one thing also, again, to make a public statement is powerful and can be listened to, but more often being heard, and being heard on those off seasons, being listened to when they're not having 1,000 voices and 1,000 texts, but at another time. And I know you're going to get to this, but right now we have already have noticed that there have been 19 anti-DEI bills filed already. And that's a lot. And I think what's happening is it's a backlash, right? And so I think when when our representatives understand, whoa, this is a big deal to me. And we start talking to them now before this coming legislative session. Hey, I hear this is happening. Tell me more about that. What do you think? Tell me what you think it is. And asking questions and letting them talk, and hearing what they have to say and then sharing with what you have to say. And I think, maybe hey, can you sit down with us at the gay chamber? We want to talk to you and hear what you have to think, and we want to share with you our thoughts and views.
Justin?
Especially with diversity chambers, like it's super important to make those connections and be a united front of some sorts. That if it impacts the business community, it impacts all of our chambers that we are cross-affiliated with. With the DE&I initiatives, I knew that was going to be hitting us. Like, man. The issue is that with Utah being so pro-business, it's important to make those connections to the people that represent us on the lawmaking table, because if we speak the language of business to our representatives, that's the common language that everyone can agree on. It's business and family. So with the business aspect, if you go into it with that kind of approach and that language and help them see, hey, this like restricting DE&I accesses in businesses or their strategies or filing discrimination suits and stuff is going to prevent the economic growth of the state. There will be businesses that will see these restrictions and will not move their companies to Utah as a result. They will not do business with other businesses in Utah because their supply diversity initiatives are being challenged. I know the county is facing some battles with that, that if we appropriate funds to help these marginalized communities rise up in our economic development, that it means these people aren't getting something, and so they are pushing back against these initiatives. So it's really important that we speak on the issues, obviously the social issues that are important to us, but if we speak the language of business and tie it to the development of Utah and
plead the business case.
Oh yeah.
This is hurting recruitment. This is hurting retention.
Oh, for sure. For sure. That will ring a giant bell with the people that represent us. So,
Senator, do you agree with what you're hearing?
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a great plug, I think, is to connect holistically and not talk about, or not just talk about the one specific kind of angle we're kind of talking about today, but connecting it to a larger picture of the business climate here in Utah. I mean, we're hearing about the Olympics potentially coming back. I think that's going to be a driving force. They have social equity concerns and environmental concerns, and we've already seen the Salt Lake Olympic Committee actually come out and voice concerns with the Parley's gravel pit proposal. So I think there's all these different kind of pieces that come together, and trying to tie them all together and say like this is going to impact business in Utah generally, not necessarily just from one perspective. That's really important. Back to the relationships piece, as far as specific strategies, I think now anytime is a good time to build relationships, especially outside of session. We're still a few months away, so reach out to your specific legislators that are your personal in your personal districts, your businesses districts, and if you have employees across the state, I would say the Democrats here in Salt Lake County probably are thinking similarly to how a lot of the perspectives here are aligned. If you have folks from outside of the area that are represented by Republicans, I'll put on my partisan hat for a minute, get them to reach out to their legislators too.
Please.
We need everyone. This is something I've talked a lot about with water. The agricultural concerns are big, and I can't speak well to agricultural interests. I live a mile away from here in the middle of the city. But if we can have people in those districts, on topics that are relevant to those legislators that may not always hear about these things, I think that's really important. So there are better messengers than me on that one, better messengers than us city slickers.
But as you're saying, the time to connect is not when there's 1,000 other texts hitting you about something that just got announced.
Yeah, if the first time we hear from someone is on a specific bill, that's fine, definitely fine. But if we've heard from them before on other things, we're like, we can kind of put a face to the name and that sort of thing. That's really important. And also, specific kind of personal stories are great too. One of the best lobbying campaigns I got last year was on coverage for family members to provide services to their family members with disabilities, and they were sending us all sorts of pictures and personal stories and stuff, and it was really impactful. And I think that bill ended up passing unanimously. So that's if you can show us those sorts of things, that is really impactful for a lot of people.
So one of the things I'm hearing in this sequence of answers is showing up. Which is for a person of my age has been exhausting, but we keep doing it. Senator, you don't represent the Senate, and so the impact of someone showing up to you may play differently elsewhere in the chamber. Can you just briefly talk a little bit about the importance? Give us some hope. Tell us to persevere, however you want to handle that.
Yeah, well, showing up is definitely easier than it used to be. I mean, one of the few benefits from COVID is we have taken virtual participation, that still goes on. So that didn't really happen that much before COVID. It was, you had to show up at the Capitol, which wasn't great for, rural folks. It wasn't great for folks who just had a hard time for whatever reason getting up there because of work or illness, whatever it might be. But you can just pop online virtually and either watch meetings or even participate directly. And so I think that that is great. And if you can mobilize yourself, mobilize your employees, your family, friends, whoever, tell them how important things are. I think that is that's something that's been great, is to see. I would say it still is, if you can get up to the Capitol and be in person, it's better, especially because you can maybe grab a legislator in the hallway and that sort of thing. But showing up with with a couple people at the Capitol and doing some lobbying is a great way to be impactful. You can stand outside the legislative chamber, the Senate chamber, and just try to grab some legislators as we come out. We get called out by lobbyists and that sort of thing, but people should be responsive to citizens as well. It shouldn't just be to corporate lobbyists. So again, shoot us a text while we're in session, and people should pop out if you're up there.
Can I pop in?
Yes, I was going to jump.
I was just going to say, I really encourage everyone in this room, you're all leaders, run for office.
That too.
Run for city council, even
School
just
board.
being a delegate in your area could just be so impactful. The statistics right now are that most delegates in Utah, and being a delegate is not difficult. No. You pretty much just show up and you can be one, especially in some of our areas in Utah. Mm-hmm. But if you were to show up and become a delegate, you would flip what is the statistics are like 85% of our delegates in Utah are white, straight men over 55. And what if we had a bunch of queer folks showing up to be delegates? That would flip who got on the ballot. And being a delegate, you're gonna stay pretty incognito. You know what I mean? A lot of us fear maybe getting to actually running for office because I don't want my name smeared. I don't want to be out there that public. But if you are willing, and it could make such a difference. Our current legislature doesn't really represent our current state. Nope. And really the diversity that is in our state. But we've got to get all of us thinking about possibly serving our communities and serving it in a very public way that makes a difference. Our lawmakers make our laws that then rule our lives. So how do we get all of us to consider being part of that?
Yeah, we saw about 50 delegates. I won't name names in this circumstance. We saw about 50 delegates last year flip one seat from a relatively good person who is easy to work with and supportive of all sorts of important issues to someone who is not. It was 50 delegates made that change in 2022.
And they are organizing.
Yeah.
So can we as well? You know what I mean? Let's do this together.
Great, thanks.
But run for office, yeah, that's key. Encourage your employees to run for office. I think that's great. If you can set aside that time, that's really important.
Nobody's running for the door, so I think we've got some people here.
I saw some nods too. I liked it.
Let's send out a spreadsheet and start signing people up. Right now.
Good plan. Okay, this one is up for grabs, and you can pass if you'd like to. My company strictly focuses on business. Is there a way for my company to be involved politically if it's not in a position to donate funds to support specific candidates or political groups?
Oh,
Go.
I talked to, because of our Business Equality Leader program, where we're certifying companies as business equality leaders, and some of them don't have a big budget or a budget for this at all. So encouraging folks at the company to organize a Pride ERG or whatever ERG, to just start gathering community. Those sorts of things, when you start with community and you start with people, then they see, whoa, you had 30 people show up to your ERG gathering? Whoa, that must matter to our employees. And if we can always prove the business case for that, recruitment, retention, that these sorts of things help with that. Because I'm only interested in business, but your people matter, and your people are going to affect your business.
Great, thanks.
I think that it's also a good opportunity for if say the organization that you're in isn't able to, like you said, they're restricted from participating politically or whatever. I think it's important to join chambers of commerce, cross affiliations, find out what's important to the chambers in the community, and that in essence rolls up to our legislators and decision makers on the Hill. I think it's important to make those connections. Also, there's the LGBTQE program I think Tracy spoke to earlier, that you're part of a supplier diversity group that's pretty awesome, pretty exclusive, and used across the country. And so I think there's ways to acknowledge, tip a hat to our social and political issues without coming forward as a company with some kind of statement or funding or something. So just being participating in these types of events like we are now, and other chambers and what's important to them as well, I think will help build that up, as that kind of fill that gap from what they are not able to participate in.
Okay, great.
Yeah, one of the notes I had written on this was actually encourage friends or employees to run for office. So there you go. So I think that's a good one. You can always show up to committee meetings, both interim and during session, and speak to bills or proposed legislation, that sort of thing, especially during the interim. I mean, you just mentioned we've got potentially 19 bills on DEI stuff. I think we're going to talk about other potential legislation. There's other stuff out there. So, voice your opinions on those. You don't have to, it's definitely is not pay to play. You don't have to donate to get involved in politics, and that's the way it should be. So Utah in particular, there's no campaign finance limits, which is problematic in a lot of ways. So definitely don't feel like money is the only thing you have to give to support people. If you can give your employees a safe space to express their views, or just to come to work and feel like they're not going to face retribution for expressing their views on social media or presenting in a committee or something like that, that's all really important. It doesn't need to involve giving a campaign contribution. We love campaign contributions, so I won't lie about that, but it makes it easier to get out and reach constituents and that sort of thing, but certainly not a requirement.
Before we get to those state bills, one question. And I should say, disclosed, although I wish I had encouraged us to formulate these questions with AI, these were actually written by a human or two. As queer and allied business owners, in what ways can we show up? In what ways can we show we are committed to inclusivity and community? And how do we connect with a larger customer base beyond displaying the very obvious symbols like flags that may, in the end, be vandalized?
I think the LGBTQE thing, because that's a certification that's not only just on paper and gives you access to the national database of supplier diversity, it's also an insignia that can be included on a website in the entrance to your company. And it's a visual cue of your participation in that diversity. And it's exclusive to those businesses that are owned or operated by someone in the LGBTQ community. So I think that's a way to show support and acknowledge your inclusion of our community with that. So.
Well, and I think about, the Chamber Safe Zone trainings. When you're doing that kind of thing, you're showing that it matters at your company. And, Liz mentioned that we have a Chamber chapter in St. George. And we finally have an employee in St. George, and it's making an impact because it needs it down there, right? So last year, we saw a huge upheaval in St. George, but then we're down there doing safe zone training, doing business equality leader trainings. When you're showing that equality matters at your company, when you're showing up, we keep having this theme come through. When you show up, it doesn't just have to be a flag, although flags are lovely. But when we show up, and especially in areas like that in Utah, when you have business owners talking to those, and your employees throughout the state are talking to their legislators, that impacts.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And interesting, you mentioned Washington County. It's like the third most populous county in the state now.
And
so it's
growing.
Yeah, come way out of left field. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was just down there for interim this week. We had our interim session. I just got back last night, actually. St. George is really
booming.
It's booming. Yeah, the whole area down there. It's a little like Disney World. It's kind of weird and stuff like the outer Ivans and Santa Clara. Just like these. Anyway, that's off topic, but
yeah,
kind of an interesting place. I think I think this is a good place for chambers. I mean, this is like you bring in the collective power of businesses. You don't have to. It's not just about a flag or something. It's presenting that unified front is really important. It can give. I think it is important to be able to have some anonymity at times when you need it for certain things. A chamber can bring businesses together, and you don't have to speak on behalf of your specific business. You might be able to have the chamber or a trade association, other things like that. If you're involved in other groups, those are great places to be able to make statements that maybe don't tie back into a specific business. So I think that is an important reason to be joining groups like this and other kind of associations and just providing a community hub. I know Tizanti is a great example, Sugar House Coffee, all great examples of places where people can show up and feel welcome, and whether it's visible explicitly or just people know that they can go there and see people they want to see and not feel like they're being endangered or criticized or something. I think that's really important. So appreciate all the businesses that are able to do that. We need more spaces like that, frankly.
So I don't think you were off topic when you talked about interesting places, because now we're going to talk about that interesting place, the Capitol. And what I'd like to hear from you are what state bills are likely to be presented that you touched on it, Mindy, gave us a little preview, but specifically, what's coming in the pipeline that's going to impact this community?
I can start this off on a positive note, because a lot of times it isn't.
Seriously.
So I know Sahara Hayes, Representative Hayes, who I don't think we're quite in her district now, but we're very close. We may be in her district. She's around here. She right now is the only LGBTQ member of the legislature. She is working on 2 bills. She said I can share these. Let's see, one to restore state employees' opportunity to get gender-affirming care if they need it. She said she doesn't think that'll probably get out of committee, if it even gets a committee hearing. That's probably accurate, unfortunately, especially based off of the legislation we've seen going the other direction on gender-affirming care. But she's going to try, which is great. So she's going in that direction. Oh, what was the other one? She's going to try to get rid of the gay panic defense. So that's the other one she's working on. That's a new...
Gay panic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still a thing in Utah. You can use that as a defense if I don't know the specifics on that one, but that is something she's trying to get rid of as well. That's a new, I think she just filed that, so she hasn't gone deep into that one, but definitely a couple. Sorry, the gay panic defense. So it's like a legal issue. I'm not an expert on that, so I don't want to speak to details or anything, but certainly would be great to abolish that. So.
I mean, is there a straight panic defense?
Yeah.
Right. No, I don't think there is.
Yeah.
Or a
Amen.
white cisgender straight bill? Wow.
Perhaps there should be.
Right.
You know, we know it's coming, right? Just what I find interesting is it seems like there are so many bills that are coming from such a place of fear, and you know, it's an election year, so everyone's going to be really wanting to rile their bases. And I think the most effective thing we can do is to, when we feel like raging, be able to articulate that in a way that isn't filled with rage and fear, that is filled with common sense and logical points, and keep to that relationship building tactic. Troy gave us a book called Love Your Enemies, and it's Arthur Brooks. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest it. But it's got an American flag, and I'm all, what are you making us read? And I was like immediately triggered from just the American flag. And yet I read it, and it was very powerful and very motivating. And in it, he talks about mode of attribution asymmetry, where we think the other side is coming from hate, but we're coming from love. But if we can really consider that those who wouldn't think or vote like us are also coming, they think they're coming from love, and they think we're coming from hate. When we can look at that and to really try, and it takes a lot of personal breathing work, we're gonna have to have you lead us every day, but really try to consider where is this coming from? And that we can approach them, tell me about this, tell me more. I don't know if you all know that we actually bought a sponsorship at the Republican State Convention and talk about some breath work on the drive there. We actually had our mentor train us in like civil rights movement, where she attacked us and called us groomers and called us all the things that we get called, and how we would respond to that. And I know this is a good story. Oh. Let me tell you, we got screamed at once, only once that whole morning. But for about 4 hours, we had conversations with Republican delegates in our state. And those delegates are often the most extreme. I had a guy back me up in the booth, and he was kind of yelling at me, this is a mental illness. And he was just yelling at me. And I said, oh, hey, tell me why you think that. And I think it shocked him that I asked him a question and I didn't rage back. But about 40 minutes, I got to listen to him. And I said, And I kept trying to bring it back. Oh, where are you from? Oh, my mom's from there. Right? And trying to get him back to the humanity of it all. And when he was really raging about trans people, I said, oh, I wish you could meet my friend Olivia. You would just love her. And then Olivia, in her Air Force jacket, walks up, and he looked at her, and Olivia took it, and for like 15 minutes, she spent time with him, and I watched him melt. And then I kind of went off, talked to other people, and as he walked out, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, I have been educated. I have been educated.
That's the work.
That's the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's slow, and it's tedious, and it's long. But Equality Utah, we're here for the long game. We're here for the long game, and we aren't raging. And many of our community are pissed at us for not raging like this. But we know the effective strategy is that we're at the table. When we're in the room, we can take the teeth out of things. We might not get what we want, but we can take the teeth out of it. When we have conversations and we educate, that's the work.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
She's running for office. I just want to
Right? I think
I swear way too much.
oh, hell no. When you take the teeth out, it totally does change the dynamic of the confrontation and redirects it into a conversation. I've had that experience with my own family, where when we bring it back to a conversation over dinner instead of over a pulpit or a shouting match of talking points, when we bring it back to a conversation, it takes the heat out, and both sides can actually come to an understanding. There are points that my stepmother's family's made that I'm like, okay, I can see how you would totally value that, and now it makes more sense than it did before. So it really does open up the dynamic of the win-win situation, wherein there's understanding, but you got to take the heat out to have that kind of a conversation. So, yeah.
Great. Let's turn that around a bit. Yes. 3 minutes? You said 20 minutes? Okay, good. Thanks.
2 more hours.
We're all going to dinner. Let's
Yes.
go.
I don't know. I think
It's 4:20.
it's 4:20.
I mean, it's 4:20 somewhere.
It's 4:20. Oh,
Wow.
no. Okay. All right, we want to honor our time, so I'll go with this one. Why are business diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives becoming a target for some lawmakers? And I know we've touched on it a little bit, but this is the other side of it. This is not the negative stuff that we're responding to, but this is what we're pushing. And that land of humanity that has been spoken about often seems so far away. How do we get there? Yeah, do we need to do something different?
I think it comes from the place Mindy was just talking about. I mean, this unawareness of what's going on in the real world. There's a lot of disconnection at the legislature. If you look at the makeup of who represents Utah, there's not a lot of diversity up there, and so I think people don't know this community well, and there's fear, and it's hard to address. That's what we just heard. So and I think that's where these bills are coming from, or just a sense of, I'll say ignorance, not ignorance in the stupid way, but ignorant, just a lack of awareness, a lack of knowledge about who people are and what they believe, and how they're raising their families, and all of these things. And we need better, starts with better public education and better childcare. All these different things feed into it. It's a big process, but it's really frustrating to see this sort of legislation keep coming forward by people who I think just don't understand at all what they're doing.
Well, like the identity politics, football gets kicked around like, oh, they're just playing identity politics. But speaking to that, it's like, well, but I do want someone somewhere that represents me, that looks like me or has the interests that I have. Because I'm the only one that has those same values and interests. Like, I want someone representing my demographic up there. Why don't I get a seat at the table and the meal that everyone else is having? It's not about excluding anyone in the majority. It's about allowing representation to work upward of the people that aren't being, if even a seat at the table, but a full-on dinner would be nice.
Mindy, I have. In my mind, 8 minutes, but apparently 30 seconds. Bring it home. Bring it home for us.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, we talk about diversity. I think real diversity is diversity of thought, viewpoint diversity, because not all queers think alike. Am I right? Not all Mormons think alike. Am I right? So when we really consider, like, I want to get to know you. I want to know what you think. I want to know why you think what you think. Let's talk about that. That's diversity. And then we're not tokenizing anyone, stuffing them in a box and reducing them to a label. How do we talk about diversity in a way that I want to know what you think? I want to know where you're from. I want to know why you think what you think.
Great. I want to thank you. Before we go, one word, takeaway from your experience being here. Senator, you go first.
Man, does show up count as one word? 2
It
words?
does.
I don't know.
Hyphenate.
Hyphenate it, yeah.
Yes.
Relationships.
Damn it. You both.
There you go.
That's my word.
That's his.
Damn it.
Damn it. No, I actually think that all captures it. Yeah.
How about I'll use a hyphen, kick ass.
There we have
Kick
it.
ass.
Thank you for being
That
patient.
fits.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.